Our very own Emma Vigeland went to New Hampshire and interviewed a couple of candidates, including Elizabeth Warren. Now, the question that she's gonna ask Elizabeth Warren is incredibly important because it has to do with something that many progressives have been wondering about. Why is it that Warren has consistently voted in favor of increasing defense spending? Take a look.
You have focused a lot on progressive domestic policy. You also voted for a military budget increase in 2017. How does that square with your progressive politics when we're talking about foreign policy?
If the question is, do I think we should cut the military budget? The answer is yes. And I'm now on the Senate Armed Services Committee. I've had this fight over and over. But there's another part to it too. We need to stop the control over our defense budget that's exercised by the giant defense industry. This is what corruption is all about. Putting lobbyists in charge of our government agencies, a lobbyist, former lobbyist in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. This is the heart of corruption. And the moment has come to call it out and to fight back.
So unfortunately, she didn't really answer the question. I mean, she listed all the issues with increasing military spending, but she didn't really explain why she voted for it. I want to give you more details on how she voted in 2017. So in 2017, Warren authorized $700 billion in defense funds. It included $640 billion for the Pentagon and an additional $60 billion for military operations in countries such as Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. This bill increased military spending by $80 billion, which far surpassed the increase requested by Donald Trump, which was $54 billion.
Yeah, and it should be noted that she was one of the overwhelming majority of senators who voted for this. So I believe it was around 90 senators or something like that.
Bernie voted against it.
Bernie voted against it. Kirsten Gillibrand also voted against it in her kind of ploy for the presidency, where she voted against everything that Donald Trump did, but not to take away from it, it was a really good vote. But yeah, Elizabeth Warren, when she's extremely left or really progressive on these domestic policies, and she's leading the way in many ways, there's a huge question mark when it comes to her foreign policy. And I wanted to ask her about it, and she dodged the question. There's really no way around it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in Massachusetts, there is a large defense industry there. So like Connecticut or New Jersey, where pharmaceuticals are really big, and so you see someone like Cory Booker voting against the bill that comes that says, we'll bring drugs over from Canada to make them cheaper. Elizabeth Warren is from a state where Raytheon is one of the biggest employers of her constituents. So it's a really, really big industry in Massachusetts, and I think that's reflected in her votes. That's why she didn't answer my question if I'm speculating on it. And if it was a long form interview, I would have followed up with her on it, but these press gaggles, everyone's screaming over each other to try to get a question. It's amazing that she actually did answer mine, because she was the only front runner that spoke to us. I'm talking about, or spoke to the press. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders didn't speak to the press gaggle. She did, so the room was packed. I couldn't even believe I got a question in the first place, but yeah.
Well, Emma, as a corporate shill, I'm curious, what persuaded you to ask her that tough question?
Actually, her campaign sent me a check and said, ask us this question because I have the prepared answer for that.
We're obviously kidding, but I will say her answer to you was very different from the answer she gave the press in her justification for voting to increase defense spending earlier. I want to give you those quotes. She said, the defense bill has a long tradition of bipartisan cooperation, and I was glad to join that tradition. This NDAA will make a real positive impact on the lives of Americans. So she was much more flowery in her language toward it earlier.
I mean, let's just try to explain what that all is about. So the NDAA is the National Defense Authorization Act. Since, I believe, 1954, that bill has passed every single year. It authorizes defense spending for the particular year. There are many years where the other bills, they don't pass, they go into a continuing resolution, they get an omnibus package. The defense bill passes every single year. And how does that work? Every congressional district has some subset of some part or some weapon that is manufactured in that district, where jobs in that district are dependent upon that industry. And that's how they corral everybody to vote for this bill every year. It also usually has pay increases for the troops, and you don't want to have to face an attack ad that says you voted against the troops getting more money, our troops in the battlefield, yada yada. So that's how that bill works. Now, yeah, go ahead.
I do want to talk a little bit about the pay increases for troops, because I think this goes back to the failure in democratic messaging. So if you're a genuine progressive and you have a problem with, half of our discretionary spending going toward the military, then why can't you specifically point to the fact that these increases in defense spending don't really trickle down to our soldiers?
No, not at all.
I mean, it's. You just show them the number. Like, why are Democrats afraid to do press conferences? You go. I'm cutting the defense spending in half. I'm cutting it by a third, but I'm giving the troops a 50% pay raise. It's over. The conversation's over, but they don't want to, because these industries are so ubiquitous and they're such a huge part of our everyday life. That's been the theme of the show so far. How the military-industrial complex has infected both parties, and only a crazy person like Donald Trump thinks to buck it, but he doesn't even go through with it because when he doesn't have the power to follow through with it because it is so powerful all across the board.
Let me just add though one thing, because what she did say, what Senator Warren did say with you, is she pivoted to the corruption angle, and it is the fact that every defense secretary under Trump is either a longtime executive, lobbyist, or board member on one of the big 5 defense contractors. Mattis just went back to join the board of General Dynamics. Patrick Shanahan, who was his replacement, was a longtime executive at Boeing. And Mark Esper, who's the current defense secretary, was a Raytheon lobbyist.
Yes.
And Warren actually hit him very hard for that in the hearings that were held for him. Warren was at the forefront of this scandal around a company called TransDigm, which is a defense contractor that makes sole source parts for planes. So it's like little widgets in that, and they charge like 1,000% markups for these little widgets, and in the cost of an $8 billion aircraft, you don't really hear about it or think about it, but they're making millions and tens of millions of dollars in profits. She, along with Ro Khanna, were the ones who went to the Defense Secretary, Inspector General, and said, there's obvious markup problems going on here. It's the only one that has they're the only one that's held apart. It's a way to essentially, trap the Defense Department into buying these things. And the IG, the Inspector General, did a report, found that there were $16 million in overcharges over a short period of time.
Wow.
The Oversight Committee held a hearing on this and got TransDigm to give back that money.
That's amazing.
So, the corruption angle is not a bad angle to play.
It's her
when you're
best
talking about
angle.
defense.
It's her best angle, and I'm thrilled that every debate she says corruption, campaign finance reform. She does it better than Bernie Sanders, who should be saying it way more.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Right? But she didn't answer my question.
I'm not trying to apologize.
No.
I'm not the corporate shill in this.
Right. Except you are. But 99 times out of 100, Elizabeth Warren is fighting against corporate greed. I'm just asking why this 1 in 100 time, it was a little questionable.
This is the frustrating thing for me when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, because on one hand, when it comes to certain domestic economic policies, she brings the goods, and her plans are definitely progressive, they're impressive and very detail oriented. The fact that she managed to accomplish the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau before she was even a senator is incredible. She applied enough pressure on the Obama administration to get that done. But at the same time, she leaves much to be desired when it comes to her foreign policy. Her past statements when it comes to Israel have been incredibly hawkish, especially toward the Palestinians. She needs to clear those things up. And the way that she answered that question, while I applaud her for bringing up the issue of corruption over and over again, she does it during the debate, she does it at campaign rallies, she did it in that answer. She needs to at least take ownership of past mistakes and talk about how she plans to pivot toward a more progressive policy moving forward, because there are progressives who are iffy on her due to her past votes, due to her past statements. And I think that it's important for her to stop skirting that issue. I feel like she's been neglecting it.
I think the second part is the important part of that. I think the good question would be, what does your ideal budget look like? Now, 90 people voted for this budget. Whether she voted for it or against it, it was going to pass. But what does your budget look like? And she's put out a plan about the Defense Department that really only focuses on that corruption angle. She says, no lobbyists will hold major positions within the Defense Department and things of that nature. But what does it look like? What can we withstand? Do we actually need to spend $700 billion on defense right now, more than the top 10 next countries combined? Or not? I mean,
right.
so what are the hard numbers? I mean, I think those are the things that she deserves to be pressed on.
And
absolutely.
And your point, Anna, I just think, just to button it up, is great. We know that her instincts are extremely progressive, but there have been question marks and blotches in the past, and instead of pivoting all the time around them, just address them. It would be so much clearer for all of us.
Absolutely.
And then we can move forward.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.